The next reason we might appear to make things complicated is that we worry about over-interpreting data. This refers to the idea that when we look at data, we shouldn't overcomplicate the interpretation too much. A great example is an imaginary conversation between two astronomers in the 19th century, and this example has been adapted from Carl Sagan's book Cosmos. The conversation between the two astronomers goes something like this. There's absolutely nothing to see on Venus when I look at it through my telescope. Oh, I wonder why that is. Maybe the surface is obscured by clouds. Oh, that's possible. Well, what type of landscapes are covered by clouds? Well, landscapes with lots of liquid on the surface, I guess. Oh, that's right. Well, what type of planets have a lot of liquids on their surface? Oh, I don't know. Planets with seas, I guess, and maybe marshes. Oh, that's a good point. Well, what do we find in seas or marshes? Well, often there's fish, seabirds, maybe mammals, something like that. So the observation was there's absolutely nothing to see on Venus, and the conclusion is it's teeming with wildlife. Clearly this is nonsense, and it's hard to believe something so absurd would actually happen. So one solution to this is to keep our interpretations as simple as possible. This is sometimes referred to as Occam's razor, and this essentially says that when we're trying to interpret our observations, it's probably safest to use the simplest explanation of the observations that we can. Another solution to avoid overinterpreting data is to be very critical when we think about what we've measured and realize it may not be what we were hoping to measure. For example, if I'm interested in global warming and I start measuring the temperature in one location, for example, just outside my house, and monitor that temperature for a few months, that wouldn't tell me about annual global temperatures. It would just give me information about the temperature outside my house for the few months that I measured it. There are lots of reasons why this may not reflect what's happening on the rest of the planet. For example, maybe my house is in the shade, or maybe the months I measured were particularly cold compared to the rest of the year, and so on. So it's important to remember what we would like to measure and what we are actually measuring may not be the same thing. Another reason that scientists might appear to make things more complicated than necessary is that we like to think of other explanations for the data we obtain. Sometimes the most obvious explanation isn't the correct one. For example, suppose we see an increase in the recorded incidence of a certain disease. Well, the obvious explanation is that whatever is causing that disease has increased. But another explanation is that we've just got better at detecting the disease. To take another example, suppose you are in your house and you look outside to notice a large amount of traffic outside your house, jammed up. What's going on? Where's the problem that's causing this? Is there a problem in the road ahead leading away from your house, causing the traffic to tail back past your house? That's the obvious explanation. Alternatively, is there a problem somewhere else? Perhaps a main road somewhere else has been closed, that's created a diversion, and the traffic has been diverted past your house, so there's an abnormally large volume of traffic coming past your house. In this case, the problem really isn't in the road leading from your house, rather it's the diversion causing cars to be forced past your house. Skepticism and peer review. All of the problems that we've discussed so far tend to make scientists quite skeptical. In fact, skepticism is even built into the scientific method. You'll recall from the page on the scientific method that we start from something called a hypothesis, but in fact what we really start with is something called the null hypothesis, which essentially says that whatever our favorite theory is, it's wrong. It's up to us as scientists to gather data to prove the null hypothesis is incorrect. If you like, we deliberately stack the odds against ourselves to help ensure we get it right in the end. Add to that, scientists like nothing better than trying to poke holes in each other's work. We're incredibly critical of each other's work, hopefully in a non-personal way. It's up to us to convince our colleagues, our peers, that our observations and conclusions are correct. That is where peer review comes in. Before we publish our results, they're reviewed by our colleagues, our peers, to see if the conclusions are justified. Peer review doesn't guarantee this, but it goes some way to ensuring that a reasonable standard is met.